That's just what I want to do before we start with, Molly, your business. Can we approve the minutes from March 26th? Did anyone read them, and do we need any changes?
I read them. They're beautiful. Thank you. So moved.
And everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
cool. Thank you. That was the only business.
All right,
Bye,
see ya.
Move to adjourn.
Quick and easy. We like that. Well, I'm hoping that the rest of this will also be a little bit quick and easy. I'm going to pre-apologize. I feel like it's going to be a lot of, I'm going to share my screen, but it's going to be a lot of like flipping between documents. So hang in there. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we're going to go through the prioritization plan document that everyone's seen. This is the document that the committee had added on to back in March, April, and then we added onto it again after the public meeting on the 30th. So let me share my screen. Oh, goodness. There we are. All right. Let me know when everyone can see it.
Good.
All right. I apologize because this is going to be a little bit small on your screen. So I will read through this again, because I realize it's going to be a little bit small on your screen. So taking a look at this, the first 13 projects were the ones that we came up with at that very first meeting back in February, end of February. So these are the ones that were sort of the hot button topics that you guys brought to us. And then we tweaked a little bit to fit the needs of the Complete Streets program. From there, anything past 13 is what I believe it's 13 to 21. These are the items that you had come up with as a committee. Again, we took a look at, we tweaked to make it sure that they fit the Complete Streets criteria. And then moving on from that, anything from 21 down to 28, these were entirely new projects that got brought up at the April 30th meeting with the public. Now, you're also going to see along column A, before I get into too much, is you're going to see some notes and some X's. Anything that is X'd was brought up at the April 30th meeting that we already had in our listing. So again, this is going to help us to prioritize a little bit, as these are the areas that both we brought up, you brought up, and the public has brought up. So as you can see, we have the areas that got brought up multiple times were trailhead parking, connection from the Javish Middle School over to Springfield Street, the George Hannah mid-block crossing near Lord Jeff Apartments, Route 202, and Bay Road traffic calming. The big one that kept getting brought up by everybody was connections to the MCRT, and that is absolutely no surprise. Number 14, off-street parking near Parsons Field and pedestrian connections, internal sidewalks through the school campuses, Springfield Road sidewalk to the high school. I believe this might actually, we might be able to combine these two, because I want to say we had another one that was very similar. That's something that we'll also do as part of this process, is we're going to have projects that pop up that are similar. We're going to see if we can combine them into one larger conglomerate. Again, number 19, sidewalk connector between the middle school and Fuller Street. The one previous was sidewalk connections between the middle school and Springfield Street. And then again, like I said, everything from 21 onward was new and brought up at the public meeting. So I'll quickly go through these ones and just read them out. And we can discuss at any point. Feel free to stop me. Again, also, if I'm moving too fast, feel free to stop me. I realize it's 8:30 and not everyone's had their coffee. I know I'm definitely having mine. So if anything is unclear or you want to talk about it a little bit more, feel free to stop me. So one of the first ones that was brought up during that public meeting was Route 9 at 202 intersection improvements. And that would be evaluating the intersection to provide alternatives such as a roundabout or a no turn on red on each approach. Again, this one is tricky because it is Mass DOT, and I know that this has been looked at multiple times over the years, but it was again brought up, so I included it. If this is something, let me also say that if there's something on here that you feel does not need to be included, let me know, and I'm more than happy to take it off. I want to say, as part of this process, we were anticipating between 15 and 20 projects. We have 28, so we have some wiggle room. If there's something here that you're just not crazy about, we can absolutely remove it. Moving on to 22, bike lanes on Springfield Street from the mobile home park to downtown. This was including bicycle lanes on Springfield Street for that stretch. It does look like the pavement is wide enough. Just from a quick overview, this would also connect to the MCRT. Number 23 is crosswalks at trailheads, and this would be adding crosswalks at popular trailhead locations for the New England Trail and Wentworth Trail, particularly across Bay Road and Route 9, which have no current crosswalks. Number 24 is bike lanes on Orchard Street, evaluating bike lanes for a connection to those communities and residential areas to the downtown area and the MCRT. Number 25 is signage for the overpass bridges, providing advance warning of low trucks and narrow roadway. Number 26 is speed feedback signs on North Washington Road, Bay Road, George Hannum Road. And that would be evaluating those three roadways as they kept getting brought up during the meeting that they're marked as 35 to 40 miles an hour and assumed 50. There's also some school bus stops on these roadways that make it a little bit difficult with the narrow roadway width and speed. So speed feedback signs are a potential possibility to be included at these locations. Number 27 is RFBs on Main Street. And this would be determining the crosswalks for the appropriate RFB locations. I know there are RFBs already out there. And I think the concern that got brought up was that they wanted more or determining which crosswalks would be the best to have the RFBs. And then number 28 is Bay Road at Route 9 intersection improvements. Again, and providing increased visibility for the skewed geometry of the intersection. I also believe that we have this one listed elsewhere. Again, like I said, we will go through and combine where we have some overlap. Again, I went through this quickly. Just taking a look at this and, hopefully had a chance to take a look at these before the meeting. Are there any questions? I know we had received public comment from one of the citizens that we had some projects that might want to be included. Has there been any other comments that you've received or thoughts that you would like to add on to any of these?
I would just like to look at 21 again, that Route 9202. That is entirely a state highway. I think, is that one of the ineligible criteria is state road?
It is.
Yeah.
And Jim or Matt can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe there might be workarounds to that. But as far as my knowledge, if it triggers anything from Mass DOT, it sort of gets redlined as. But again, they can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, since it's a state layout and state jurisdiction, the town can't be the champion of the project or get funding for it. However, it did come up during the public participation, and if the town likes the project, I think it's worth at least presenting. That way, when the MassDOT goes to do improvements, they're going to look at documents such as this for complete streets improvement. So at least if it's identified, even though it's not a municipal project, it's at least in your plan and that you can document it came up at public meeting. If that makes
We
sense.
have talked about it with DOT under the North Main TIP project that is currently under design, and that has been brought up. The state basically said, if you want a roundabout there, you can put it in and pay for it. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going to just pay for it. So,
Sure.
So it has been brought up, and there's been a little bit of conversation. So I agree with you that keeping it here as at least a talking point is a good idea.
Okay.
If we say it often enough, it might be true. Are we looking mostly at things that won't have to be put into the tip?
Not necessarily. These can be funded completely through Complete Streets program or a combination of other grant programs. But it, if it's a larger program, it is definitely going to be something that's eligible for the tip as long as it's on a federal aid roadway.
Was 27, Molly, you did go over it a little bit.
Mhm.
Excuse me, the residents that brought it up are looking for more RFBs because there's already a number there.
Yeah, so I think this was more of they like the RFBs, but they were more concerned with determining if all of them were necessarily needed or if you could do like every other crosswalk. And I think this was more of studying the appropriate locations for where the RFBs are. From my experience, I feel like I've never seen an RFB taken out. And again, that might just be in my own experience. I've never seen that, and that might be something that they do recommend if there's too many in a short distance of space. But we did include this. Just it got brought up. We wanted to include it, and again, bring it back to you. Like we said, we are not heartbroken if there's anything in here that you're like, that no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there any specific locations on Main Street that the committee thinks an RFP should go? Are there any hot crossings that are, that could benefit from something like that, even just to try?
We've got again, we have a number of them. We have trouble, they are kind of a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
We just had them reassess. They apparently lose communication with each other, which is why they don't always go on. But I was talking with Chris, my highway supervisor, recently about trying to make those crosswalks even more obvious, whether we did some raised, some different pavement, a little bit raised, something textured. I know we tried putting in those reflector, like the flexible reflector stands that kind of get adhered to the road, but those get run over. And but I do think a lot of those intersections, especially on the common area, could use some more. They could become more obvious or more visual. There's so much traffic. I think cars are just not paying attention that people are trying to cross the street.
Sure.
When the RFBs are working, I think they're good, but not necessarily during the day. Do they catch your eye? I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, that's something that we can definitely include and tweak to be more of, like you said, making those more obvious and not necessarily, providing more RFBs, but making them more noticeable, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's something we can add. Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's important because I know that I try to pay attention to them, and even I sometimes don't see somebody standing there, because they're not. You don't see them moving towards it. And another problem is it's a couple of them have bus stops right there, and is this person trying to cross the road or waiting for a bus? And there's that. But a lot of people just kind of blow right through it. I think they don't notice it. They're not expecting it.
Linda, is DPW opposed to like neck downs, extending the curb out for plowing? I know sometimes plowing is an issue, but
No, I don't think we're opposed to it.
Because you wouldn't, I don't, with Main Street being an arterial, I don't think you'd want a raised crosswalk or a tabletop. I think that would be, we tend not to put them on arterials because of the high traffic, and sometimes the speeds, they don't work effectively.
Yeah.
But if we were to, I mean, you got on-street parking on one side, you got a narrow on the common side, but I'm just, no, a different way to enhance that crossing. And I think, are there a couple of them outside the Main Street tip project that's being advanced? I think a couple of them are just outside, right?
They're
Or will
all
we-
in the tip. The tip is
Okay,
Main Street to North Main.
it goes up to the pavement line. I couldn't remember where it ended, the paving
Yeah.
line to the intersection. Okay, so those two will be as part of that tip project. Okay,
Right, and currently that redesign is to include parking on the common side of the street, currently not
Okay.
there. And then the narrowing of like the North Main Street section, which is, wide at this point, I think will help just make that a little more pedestrian friendly.
yep.
So I don't know if bump outs are, I don't think bump outs are in the design right now for the tip,
Okay.
at least on the Main Street section.
Yeah, I'll coordinate with Amanda and look on that. I know, I remember we were doing some stuff down by the pub, a little bit more pronounced, but, okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna flip briefly to the email that you received from Patricia. And just to quickly go through, I know they listed out a bunch of areas of concern. They had sent, I believe, yeah, it looks like 3 here. 3 emails about these. I did take a quick look through. It looks like, a lot of the things that they had mentioned were in line with the other things that got mentioned at the public meeting. I know this Carriage Drive, Jackson Street, this is, what we had talked about a little bit, especially over, it's similar to what we had talked about over by the George Hannum and Lord Jeff apartments, in terms of, it's high speed, doing something to slow that traffic. Let's see if there's anything else. Was there any other comments that you had received from the public besides this, that, we should take a quick look at, to include?
Everything I received, I sent over. So no,
Perfect.
nothing
Okay.
different, nothing more.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what was mentioned, did get covered in the public meeting or, had already been brought up, which is good. We'll take another quick look through this, see if there's anything else that we can pull out. It does look like they mentioned Franklin Street. Again, speeds. Okay. All right, perfect. So the next document I'm going to show, this is the draft ranking. So this is the criteria for ranking each of the projects in this spreadsheet, to come up with an actual priority number. So this here, this I do want to just say is not set in stone. We are working with Hadley in parallel to working with you, and they're undergoing the same process. One of the things that they've done is they've tailored this criteria, excuse me, a little bit more to their community. And I'll show you that quickly. This is just going to be a draft of what they've suggested. So as you can see here, there's another 4 criteria. So 1 through 12 is typical criteria that gets included per community. But for Hadley, they added another 4 criteria. And just taking a quick look at this, I do think that some of these would be a good addition to Belchertown, but I do just want to run these by you, and we'll go through each of the criteria as well, so that you have an understanding of that. Again, like I said, none of these are set in stone. Additionally, the weighting is not set in stone. So if there's
Julie?
If there's any sort of weighting that's listed here, that, you know, the community is like, nope, like we want to make this a priority, weight it a little bit heavier, we can absolutely change that. These are more than capable of changing. So let's start with the basic criteria, and then I'll go back in through the additional criteria that Hadley included that I think would be really great for Belchertown. So flipping through, so the criteria are, so traffic volumes, you know, we can take a look at, you know, the roadways of concern, how much volume is on those, you know, and then that obviously gets weighted. Hold on. All right, let me go back. I'm getting too ahead myself. So each category, like I said, has a weight that is out of 1 through 5. So, you know, 1 being, you know, least likely to raise the points, 5 most likely to raise the points, and the higher the point total, the higher the ranking for priority. So as you can see here, this sample is out of 46 and a half. And the reason why it's out of a half is it makes it a little bit easier for determining tiebreakers. So anything that's, you know, closer to 46 and a half, that's going to be closer to your top priority. And again, just because it's a priority on paper, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a priority for you. And that's where, you know, adding in some of the additional criteria and changing the weighting will help to make everything align a little bit easier with what's being shown on paper and what you actually want. So, all right, now that I did that, I apologize. Let me get back into it a little bit. All right, so traffic volumes, again, taking a look at, you know, what that average daily traffic is on those roadways. Anything that's higher, you know, something like Main Street, that might get ranked a little bit higher just because there's higher volumes. It'll be more of an area of concern. You know, again, same thing with bicycle and pedestrian activity. You know, places where there's already existing bicycle and pedestrian activity, you know, are going to rank higher than places where there's not existing. We also have criteria that is there potential for bicycle and pedestrian activity, and that gets ranked separately. Vehicle speeds, very similar to the traffic volumes. Higher speed areas are going to be ranked higher. They're more likely to be areas of concern. Modes served and accessibility. So this is a criteria for, you know, you have the PVTA lines that run through town. You know, are there areas where you have bicycles, pedestrians, buses, vehicles all converging? And areas, again, like that, where you have more modes are going to rank a little bit higher. But that also quantifies for if there's potential for more. Like if you're looking at putting in a bus stop, or if you're looking at putting in a shared use path, then that would rank a little bit higher as well. Crash history, again, higher number of crashes, higher areas of concern will get ranked a little bit higher. Some of the side streets where there might not be as many crashes would get ranked lower. And that's sort of what I mean by there's going to be some that on paper don't rank as highly, but the community wants. So hopefully by adding criteria, weighting it a little bit differently, we can get those to shake out. Connections to key nodes. So this is like downtown areas, shopping plazas, town resources such as the library or the town hall, and making those connections from sidewalk, shared use path, bike lanes, the trails to those hotspots. And then again, number 7 is proximity to schools and senior centers. So that just focuses on getting to and from the schools. We do have a number of listed ones surrounding the schools, so those would rank highly as well. Right away and project readiness. This is more about takings. So how many properties would be impacted? Is this public property, private property? And ranking those in a way, obviously, the less properties you impact, the better the score. And then environmental impacts, again, the more rigorous of environmental permitting that you need, the lower it would score. Ideally, you're looking for no environmental impact. And then constructability, again, that sort of falls in line with the right of way. If there's going to be more significant, utility work or public work, that's going to rank lower. Ideally, some of the higher ranking projects are things that have very little impact for construction. And then project cost. Project cost gets determined in a couple different ways. I'll show you the actual ranking spreadsheet. That's where the project cost would get determined. And I can show you how that sort of shakes out a little bit. But again, anything over $1 million, the higher the cost, the lower the number, just because the communities obviously want to do sort of smaller, easier projects that are a little bit lower cost. And then context sensitive design. This one is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very subjective. And this is one of the items that is very like community based. Is this matching the needs of the community? Is this matching, historic resources, natural resources? Does this disrupt the community? Is this, effective use of town resources? That type of thing. So that one is a little bit more subjective, whereas everything else is fairly analytical. So again, I know I sort of went through these very quickly. I am going to jump into the additional criteria that we were looking at for Hadley, just so you can get a little bit better idea. So this is 13 through 16. All right, 13. So for some of these, again, I know I've mentioned they're typically 1 through 5 for scoring. For some of these, they might be a little bit less than that. They might be 1 through 3, 1 through 4. And the weighting gets, obviously it all shakes out accordingly. But one of the ones that Hadley is looking at that I think would be great for Belchertown is access and connection to MCRT. Jim can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I know he and I have had multiple conversations about it. But because it's through DCR, the town can make changes to the MCRT for the portions that the town owns, but anything that the town doesn't own, you can make, excuse me, you can make alterations up to it. So you could add a trailhead, you could add a connection, but you couldn't make any improvements to the trail itself. Jim, did I reiterate that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
we have the improvements going directly up to the Mass Central Trail. Then if becomes a project that's going to be designed and built, then it's coordination with DCR in order to make sure we meet their needs as well as part of the project. But a lot of the projects in Hadley, and it came up, as Molly knows, during their public meeting, is we have this asset through the community. There's not enough connections to it, to local businesses, et cetera. So let's try and get the trail there. So, once it crosses DCR, as Molly mentioned, you do have to coordinate with them for the improvements.
Thank you.
Sure.
I know we've had multiple conversations about it on our end, and I just,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was reiterating that correctly.
Yep.
So for this one, again, this is sort of a little bit smaller of a scoring, but this would be, a no direct connection, or part of a planned connection within a quarter mile, within a half mile, that type of, the distance we could play with a little bit, and then connects directly to the MCRT. There were multiple instances, both during the public meeting and during committee meeting, that connections and access were a really big topic of conversation. So I think that, this, just again, from me taking a look at it, this would be a really great point to add in to the criteria. Again, nothing is set in stone. If you are like, no, you're not going to offend me. One of the other criteria points that we added for Hadley that I'd like to, pose to you as to if you'd like it, is public engagement and community plans. And this would be scoring based off of, is this something that, came up in the committee or just by us at VHB reviewing and thinking, oh, hey, like that would, be cool for that community. Conceptualize doing public engagement. So that would be, again, during that public meeting. Was it a project identified by something like Mass Trails, something like PVPC? Was this identified as part of the master plan? And then the highest, highest rank would be project was discussed as part of the Complete Streets public engagement meetings and as part of the community master plan. Again, this is just sort of different levels of how many times was this project brought up? And I think this is also another good one that we could potentially include because we do have a listing of, yes, these were some that were brought up in the committee. These were some that were brought up in the public. These were some that are definitely part of the master plan. And I think this would be another good one that we could include. And again, you're more than welcome to tell me absolutely not. Connectivity and gap reduction. This one I sort of mentioned a little bit previously as to, is there an existing network for pedestrians and cyclists? Is there a planned project for a bicycle pedestrian connection? This one is also, the way it's sort of worded is, would this particular project work in conjunction with another proposed project and to create a system? I feel like taking a look at some of the items that we have, we definitely have some projects that, oh, this one connects to this one and it doesn't really make sense if you don't include this other one. So this criteria is more about, does this sort of form a network and a system of plans? And then this very last one is bus route connectivity. I know we mentioned briefly in the public meeting some of the school bus routes being on narrower roadways with higher speeds. This one I feel like was more of a concern in Hadley because they do have the PBTA routes, the public bus routes, and the public bus routes don't have defined stops. They stop at each student's house. And I don't necessarily know if we covered that in the public meeting in Belchertown, if that is something that your public schools do as well, if they stop at individual students' houses or if they have determined bus stops. But this is something that we are taking a look at with Hadley to determine where the public school routes and the PBTA routes sort of overlap so that we can provide better connections for both of those routes. Again, I went through a lot of this quickly, and I'm more than happy to talk through any of these. Any questions? Do you want to digest for a minute? What are your thoughts? I can open it. There you go. Or is there some type of criteria that you'd like to see included that we didn't include? I know I was talking a lot about, if there's something here that you're not crazy about, we're more than welcome to get rid of it. But is there something in here that's missing that you think that we should include?
I like the additions. In particular, whether it's referenced in the community plan, master plan, community engagement, I think that's important to carry over. I'm not sure how the public school stop overlapping PVTA, because we only have a short distance. I mean, Eric, Doug, you guys might chime in otherwise, but it can be there. I just didn't know how relevant it was to include.
Well, yeah, PVTA goes down kind of in front of the school's campus. I don't know if there's a stop there. I don't think there's a stop between the common and the courthouse. But there will be eventually if we ever get, the state school built. Because then they reroute the buses up through there and have stops. But right now, I don't know. So if you're a public school kid taking the PVTA, which I don't know why you would, you'd either have to walk from the common or from the court. So, but there are sidewalks, so there's at least that, so maybe the sort of the gaps would be more of an issue. where there are sidewalk gaps or bicycle gaps.
At one point, I do remember there was a temporary bus stop put right in front of the Chubby's gas station, but it's since been taken away, so I don't know what the reason was.
Again, are there um, any criteria that you feel like are missing that you'd like included? I know we have the ones that are connections to key nodes of, schools and senior centers and, town resources. Are there any, I guess, any types of connections that you'd like to see, or areas in particular that you'd like to have connected, whether that's, low income housing, whether that's, some more residential areas. We can always tweak the criteria to include those as well.
Well, what about the south end of town, which really doesn't have any bus service, between Palmer and Belchertown? I'm thinking that's a main transportation route for people going between the Turnpike and UMass, and if the Palmer gets its rail station, I can see that end of town becoming very popular with developers and telecommuters. We're trying to plan for that with our land use plan and other things, but I think, it still could become a transportation clog.
Absolutely. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I agree, Doug. 181 is not pedestrian friendly in the least, or even bike, if you think about it. Trying to look at that route to Palmer as, yeah, a little more, multimodal.
And you should know, don't you spend your weekends counting cars going by your house?
Oh, yes. I was so happy when Steve widened the road for me so I could run on it, but it's still too scary.
Okay, so from this, I'm pulling out a couple ideas. So I think we should include another, I think we should include another project here that is focusing on 181, making that, whether that's a shared use path or a sidewalk, to include, more pedestrian bike friendly along that stretch. I know, especially if, like you said, Palmer ends up with the rail station. I know Palmer is also looking at doing some MCRT work. Jim can get into that a little bit because he's up to his eyeballs in MCRT work in Palmer. But so I think that might be another good project to pull out, and that could be, our number 2930 for, a potential project. But I also think that in terms of criteria, because Belchertown is so interconnected with, the MCRT and, sort of being that gateway to Amherst from Palmer, I think we could add another criteria about, connections to the larger community. So whether that's, providing connections that go into Palmer, go into Granby, go into Amherst, and sort of extrapolating that and adding that as a criteria for some of these projects as to if they connect to the overall region. What are your thoughts on that?
So the nodes, what was the criteria for connection to
Oh, the connection to key nodes. So
key
that's,
nodes?
yeah, so that one's more geared towards let me find it. what number is that? That's number 6. Yeah, so this is more geared towards, like parks, library, like I think centers within the town. But I think we could also modify that to be, larger community connections, to other communities, so like other surrounding communities, if that's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I was thinking if including it, maybe like just in, in the description, including regional connections or yeah, larger community connections. We do have the criteria about schools and senior center.
Mhm.
So it might be applicable to add into that number
Okay.
6. I don't know. What does everyone else think?
How many people would, parents would let their kids walk to school? I don't see that happening much anymore. They don't even want them to ride the buses.
I don't think it's before school. I think it's more after school too, because a lot of kids after school will walk from Jabish over to Chestnut. Then they'll cut through the woods from Chestnut to get over to like Tractor Supply Plaza and Pride and then Crispies and all that. So I'm not sure it's more of the before school as much as some stuff after school with kids going around different places, because after school parents are still at work. If they're old enough, they let them walk home or go over to the to the playground area or to the basketball courts that we have, and that's where obviously we've had some of our vandalism and stuff after school. But I think after school you get more of those kids utilizing different spaces, especially in front of kind of the rec and going up this corridor.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle. It's the majority of kids from, coming down Springfield Street to the high school to get to Chestnut Hill, so they can get to the play areas, they can get to the Pride or Dunkin' Donuts or across the street to the skate park and at the fields over there. That's the area that they want to be in. And Kyle's right, it's after school that's the issue.
Okay. Well, we can modify this one for proximity to schools, because it does include both to and from school. And, it's still a route to school. So we can modify that a little bit, so that it sort of meets what you're talking about in terms of it being more of a leisure and not necessarily a like this is a direct path for, I guess, the like ride to work for school, if that makes sense. I'm going to quickly go through, what all of this is going to look like. So we have, this spreadsheet that we've seen. This obviously has, all of the different criteria and categories within it for the project types. So what we're going to do is this next spreadsheet. This one highlighted here in yellow. This is just a sample. This is, again, we pulled this from Hadley since we're working with them. So this includes, a quick little description of the project. And then over here is the ranking. And this is, again, based off the criteria that we just went over. Everything receives a score of, 1 through 5 or 1 through 3, depending on, what the criteria are. These get weighted, and then the weighted score is calculated, and then from here it gets ranked. And so this, like I said, just because it's on paper ranked as number one doesn't necessarily mean that the community is going to want that as number one. And so we can, once we put in all of the projects and we rank them with criteria, we can bring this back to you to have you guys take a look at it, and see sort of where the weighted projects are and what their ranks are versus what you guys actually want. And having these community conversations are great because we do have a feel of, reducing speeds on some of the roadways, safer routes on some of the higher speed roadways, connections to the MCRT. All of these are, seem to be the community areas of concern. So I guess just matching that with this spreadsheet is the ultimate goal. And we at VHB do have obviously the knowledge of that from these conversations, but you might want to take a look at it and be like, actually, we've had some thoughts change on this, just based on our feedback that we're getting, other projects that we have going on in town. Let's rank these a little bit differently, and then we can tweak from there. Again, like I said, all of these are the criteria that are listed in this document. And then you'll get a project cost associated with it. So I'll walk you through what that project cost looks like a little bit. So this is a sample. We're going to take a look at, the length of the roadway, what the existing width is, what the proposed width is, and then some of the proposed improvements. So this is a little drop-down list of all the potential proposed improvements that could be included in a project. So whether that's RFBs, whether that's, a signalized intersection, just traffic signs, some pavement milling and overlay, roadway lighting, all the way up through, repairs to an existing shared use path, a new shared use path. There's a variety in here. And so these would be selected. Obviously, the quantity is pulled right from, this calculation up here. And then this all calculates based off of unit cost to give this cost. So it's a very high level estimate. It's not something that's, super in depth, but it's enough to give you a better idea as to what to expect. There's nothing saying that cost wouldn't change over time, but there's also nothing saying that, just a simple sidewalk project would be $500,000. So this is just to sort of give you a better idea of what to expect. And then that obviously populates into this spreadsheet, and that is reflected in the weighted ranking. So that this spreadsheet would be done for, like I said, all of the projects. We would come up with those rankings. We would bring those back to you. Now that we've sort of talked through the criteria and we have a better understanding of what you guys would like, we will include that in here as well. But those are sort of our next steps, is to finalize the criteria based off of our conversation today and start plugging the projects into this spreadsheet matrix to get some weighted rankings. And then we would send those back to you for your review. All right. I realize I went through a lot today. Any questions?
Molly, the construction cost, I mean, I know it's going to be high level, and then, over time, a year passes, 2 years pass. How do we know what the actual construction cost is going to be if we do, choose to apply for the funding? How does that get tweaked or, sharp penciled or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to toss that over to Jim because he just has a little bit more experience with that.
Okay, it's part of those estimates. They're order of magnitude, so they're large, and they should be conservative. So if you have a project, say, that you want to accelerate immediately and you want to start it next year, it's going to be pretty close. But 5 years from now, then you might want to look at the construction cost, see what things are going for in the market for asphalt and some concrete, and you may want to bump that up and do like an escalation of 4 or 5% per year in order to escalate that amount. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, and is that something that VHB would be available to help us along the way? I know when I did this in Palmer and we applied for funding, and the funding was so low that we couldn't move the project forward, and that'll always sit with me because we had to give the money back.
Yeah, so one thing we did actually in Palmer was they gave us a task to take the plan and update the cost estimates because they wanted to apply again. So what we did is took out what had been done already and then applied escalations to those projects to bring them up to 2023 or 2024. I can't remember which year. And then we utilized those values to go and apply into the complete streets for funding. And also there's a contingency portion in there as well. So that'll help, it's hard, as you know, to determine the market on asphalt and concrete, the big
Yeah.
two pieces.
Jim,
So
Jim,
yeah.
what's the cost escalation that we're going to apply to this? Are we going to apply a certain number of years? I can't recall what they let us bump up to.
Oh, that I don't know offhand. I'd have to take a look.
I think, Linda, I think to your point, I think we could just, out of the projects, just put some sort of, in addition to a contingency for unknowns, a cost escalation to these two. And if DOT says, oh, that's too high of a cost escalation when they review our plan, then they'll come back and comment. But it would be good for us to add that, 5 years, 10 years, and maybe it's as the projects get lower on the rank, we can increase the number of years and the number of escalation just for that purpose, what you're
Thanks.
talking about.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess one other question, Molly, as VHB's team ranks these and gets back to us, is the next meeting something that we would all be together again with, or is it more of a committee discussion time? What do you thoughts?
I think we could do either. I think, if the committee wants to meet, once we give you the, priority ranking, and sort of discuss amongst yourselves, and then sort of bring that back to us and be like, no, actually, what's ever ranked number 4, we want number 15. You're more than welcome to do that. We're more than welcome to sit in and, have that conversation with you. I mean, I think, that depends on more of whatever you're comfortable with. But also if there's anything that comes up during that process that we flag as like, that's suspicious, we might want to just sit in anyway.
Okay. My thought is committee that we might get this spreadsheet back and then maybe we can meet in person and go over with our pencils on what VHB is suggesting, and then give feedback back to VHB and probably convene again with our consultants. I just know this is through August.
Yep, end of August.
The contract's through August. Okay.
So I mean, if this is something that we can, turn around and have for you, before the July 4 holiday, and then have all of July to take a look at it, we can then tweak over the course of the month of August, to still meet that deadline.
And then Molly, remind me, is this something that gets presented to the select board once we've gotten to a almost final draft, or how does that roll usually?
I believe that depends per community, because I know we just ran into this in Hadley. That's something, since you do have the committee, once it reaches a point of you being okay with it, we can submit directly to Mass DOT, or we can go to the select board. Again, I'm going to toss this one to Jim because I know we again ran into this in Hadley, and sort of I think at that point it came down to more, do we have the budget to go to the select board?
Yeah, I have not seen it where it had to go to a select board or higher committee. It does have to get submitted to MassDOT. They do have to review and approve it. So they will get it, review it, and then it could get kicked back for some minor tweaks. So got to budget a little bit of time in there for that as well in order to get the draft in. Does it hurt to go to your select board? I don't think it would hurt. at least put it on there, mention it if they want to discuss it. I think that's just more public participation that would be helpful. So one kind of question, a little unrelated, is I was in Palmer a couple of weeks ago doing a public meeting for their Mass Central Rail Trail feasibility study. And there were people from Belchertown there from the Greenway Committee supporting the trail, which is, obviously great. A couple of them were asking about your committee, and is it a closed type committee? Is it open to them, et cetera? And I said, that's something I don't know. You may want to touch base with Linda or somebody within the municipality. So I think there was some interest from them, and I just wanted to at least pass that along to you. But
Thank you.
Yep.
I mean, we are a committee. The agenda's posted. Anyone could have participated today through the link. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I see what you're saying. I do think I think the public may be looking for another opportunity to weigh in, and I guess we sort of have to figure out how that might happen.
Okay. If you have a website, you could put information on there as well and kind of push it as well. That's something that people can look at their convenience too.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
We're
if
good.
there's no more questions or comments. And so I think what we're going to do on our end, like I said, is we're going to have, that ranking spreadsheet, updated for you, before the July 4th holiday. And we'll send that back. You guys are more than welcome to take a look at it. Feel free to include us, on your next meeting. But don't feel that you're obligated to. Provide your comments on it, your thoughts on it, send it back to us, and then we'll keep moving from there.
Great.
All right.
All right.
Okay. So I guess we just have to formally adjourn. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
That was John. Right?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
All
Thank
right,
you so
thanks.
much. Yep.
All right, we'll see.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.